When you say, what am I doing wrong? The answer is actually less of what you're doing wrong and just what you're not doing. And what you're not doing is making this entire process so brutally predictable that their brain, which is underdeveloped, which has a hard time predicting the future, which has a hard time to orient steps in a series. These are all executive functions. You have taken away all of this mental and cognitive challenges from morning routine. And now it just becomes a game of just following the steps. Hello and welcome to the Whole Parent Podcast. I am so excited that you are joining me today. You can tell that this podcast is going to be a little bit different than the last couple that you've heard just by that little intro. And I already have a bug sitting on my microphone, which is funny. Sometimes these little stink bugs get into my house and then they run amok because I'm on my porch. It's a beautiful day here. I'm excited because I'm back out on the porch even though it's mid-November or late November. Thanksgiving's this week. And oftentimes at this time of the year, I have to have all sorts of heaters on and stuff out here because I'm in an uninsulated room in Chicago. But this morning, it was just warm when I woke up. So I was like, all right, let's record some podcast episodes, or a podcast episode at least. If you notice, this is a little bit different than the last couple of podcast episodes that I've recorded. And I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on that before I jump and dive right into our material for today. As you probably can tell, the podcast has been pretty different in the last, year and a half than how it started. When we started, I was doing emailed in questions where parents would email me questions or DM me questions, and I get hundreds of questions a day from DMs and things like that. And I would take those and I would kind of organize them into questions that are around similar ideas, like sibling rivalry, or in this case today, we're talking about morning routines, a bunch of questions that stem from getting up in the morning and getting out the door. And I would I would put those questions onto just a very simple Google Doc, and then I would read them live on the podcast, and I would just respond in real time. Sometimes I would make a couple notes ahead of time, but I would really try and respond as if I was on group coaching. So for those who might not know, I do a membership, and inside the membership, I do monthly group coaching. I've been doing that for over 2 years, and actually, when it first started, it was weekly group coaching. So I've done hundreds of these coaching calls where I sit with people and I answer questions just like this. And what I've received over and over from people inside the membership is the best part of the membership is watching just the replays. They're I use this as my monthly podcast from you. And so that's how the podcast started. And it was great. We had a ton of people listening. We covered some awesome things, had a bunch of 5-star reviews. And you would say, John, why did you change anything? And the answer is because I'm a little ADHD, not a little, I'm a lot ADHD. And I got kind of bored with doing the same thing every time. And so I started interviewing different parenting experts. And those interviews did not always attract the same amount of attention and interest just because it wasn't as practical, boots on the ground type parenting answers to questions, not as much neuroscience. It was talking to experts that I was really passionate and excited about talking to, but not everybody was here for it. And so I adjusted that over the time that I was interviewing people, and I started to interview people and then envelop those into episodes where they were scripted out. I would read the script for you of exactly what I wrote out. So it's more like my writing, less like my talking or my coaching or my social media content. And I would script those out, and then I would insert the interview, the key interview clips or the best parts of those interviews into those grander podcast episodes. And I would add all sorts of music and high production value. And while that is really great, and I think that those episodes are really, really good and will kind of stand as a monument or a testament to a tremendous amount of work, the problem is I just can't pump them out very quickly, right? If you look back, episodes come out, every 3 weeks. There's periods where I have to take entire months or several months in a row off just because it's impossible to record and edit and write and do all of this stuff and organize the interviews and host the interviews and go back for questions that we missed and stuff like that after the fact. So what I'm doing now, or what it eventually morphed into, was doing kind of standalone episodes where I was scripting them out and I didn't even have guests. And if you look back at the last few, several of those are those episodes where they're scripted. I read off what I've already written, and I add all of this music, and it's kind of has like a This American Life type feel, if you are familiar with that podcast. And again, those just take so much time. They take so much, an inordinate amount of time of editing and writing and additional research, because I like cite a lot of studies and things like that. And while I love that, and I would love to do that kind of professionally or full time, the truth is the podcast is a net negative financially for me. So I pay money to do this podcast. I don't get paid money to do this podcast. And so as a result, again, I just wasn't putting them out very quickly or frequently. And it means that people are left kind of in the lurch, just going, well, I came here for practical parenting advice, and now you're giving me this like kind of philosophical storytelling parenting philosophy. I guess that's the right word. And while that's important and exciting and fun to listen to, I want more than one episode a month. So all of this long intro to say, today we return back to something that I've been encouraged by so many of you to do for so long, which is just, John, can you just start answering questions again? Like, you don't even have to edit it. You don't have to add music. You don't have to add anything. Just like edit, just put these, hit record these podcasts, and then you can put out, one a week, or even maybe more than one a week if you're able to record more than one a week. And so here I am. We're talking about morning routines this morning, and I'm going to jump in with our first caller question. This one is from Nancy, and she says, "Hi, John. My question is about morning routines. My 6-year-old wakes up slow, and my 3-year-old wakes up fiery. It's hard to balance all the emotions coming at me before 8 a.m. Somehow I end up bouncing between brushing someone's hair, negotiating which socks feel too scratchy, and no matter how early I get started, we're either late or someone has screamed at each other." I grew up in a house where mornings were tense, to put it mildly. I can feel some of that old wiring kicking in. Okay, I can tell Nancy has read my book. What am I doing wrong? Okay, Nancy, the first thing that I want to say is that you're not doing anything wrong, right? So let's put aside this notion that there's a right and a wrong way to parent in these moments beyond not harming your kids, right? So I don't want to start from a place of saying, well, if I was perfect, none of this would happen and it must all be on me. I love parent-centric ideas or thinking about parenting rather than child-centric ideas about parenting. What I mean by that is, rather than blaming the kid for having an underdeveloped brain or blaming in some way, like just kids in general, inherently, all kids are bad or all kids are annoying. This is where you get phrases like the terrible twos or the, terrible threes. I've heard three-nager, all of this stuff. Instead of thinking of it in those terms, it's much better, I think, to think about parenting from a parent-centric model, which it looks at, okay, I can't change everything. I can't fix everything, but I can do those things that are possible for me to do. And those changes will, in the long term, on the grand scale, make positive change for my kid. And so I love that you're starting from that point. But I want to rephrase that. What am I doing wrong? Just right off the bat, and say, okay, it may not be that you're doing anything wrong. It may just be that there are better or more effective ways to do morning routines that don't lead to this kind of snapping. And the first piece of advice that I give people with morning routines, and you've already kind of done this here, you've already said this, and so I'm kind of giving this advice not just to you, Nancy, but to anybody who's struggling with morning routines, is to set your expectations that it's going to take you 20 minutes to get out of the house a minimum. So if you have to leave the house, like in my case, we have to be out of the house by 8:35. We got to be in the car, 8:35, driving to school. My kid's school is about 20 minutes away, and they're supposed to be there between 8:50 and 9 o'clock. I know that I need to give myself a 5-minute-ish buffer in case there's traffic or we get stopped by a train or something like that. And just in general, because I know even if I say 8:35 is my intention, if it's 8:37, I don't want to then be 2 minutes late, right? So I've even built in another 5-minute buffer for myself there. And sometimes we need it because, like I said, you can get stuck by 2 trains going the opposite direction or something like that. Hey, I'm interrupting myself in this episode. I want to have a really quick heart-to-heart. If you're listening right now, maybe you're on a walk, you're doing dishes, you're hiding from your kids in the bathroom, I'm guessing this podcast is doing something for you. Maybe it's grounding you, it's inspiring you, reminding you that you're not alone. Maybe it's the one corner of your week that doesn't feel loud or rushed or transactional. And I want you to know that's kind of the point. I make this show with love. I don't make it with algorithms. I'm doing this for you. But here's the deal. It costs money for me to make things like this that feel like a deep breath in the world that won't stop shouting. And so if you've been listening for a while and you haven't subscribed, this is your friendly nudge. It's $5 a month on Substack. That's literally less than that sad coffee that you ordered last week that you probably didn't even finish because your kids interrupted you. Please don't make me get dramatic, okay? Because honestly, if this isn't worth $5, I just don't know what it is. So right now, if you can afford it at all, please go click the link in the show notes, become a paid subscriber on Substack, support the work that you want to stay alive. And seriously, thank you. Even if you walk away right now and you pretend that I didn't just say this, I'll know. No, I won't know, but I still love you. Please, 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 please consider supporting Whole Parent. It's the only way that I get paid to do this and social media. Oh, yeah, I actually recorded that and forgot one more thing. You also get bonus episodes. So if you need something in return, that's your return. Bonus episodes just for you as a paid subscriber. Okay, that's it. So first thing that you got to do is you just got to set that intention. It's going to take 20 minutes getting out of the house. So if I'm 8:35 as my leave time, that means at 8:15, I need to start that movement of saying shoes, coats. In my case, it's usually like snowsuits, extra clothes. My kids go to forest school, so there's a lot of additional things. Obviously, a lunch for lunch, things like that. And I got to start that movement 20 minutes before we have to leave. And for people who don't have kids, I don't know why you'd be listening to the podcast, but in case you are listening and you don't have kids yet, that seems crazy because it's like, how long does it take to put your shoes on and walk out of the house? For an adult, a minute, maybe two, right? But for a child, when you're navigating all of these things, and it might come up, hey, by the way, I'm still hungry, I got to eat, or I have to go to the bathroom, which is actually a good thing to do anytime before you leave the house because it's just, do it there and where you have parental reminders to do that instead of even maybe your kid's on a bus or something and then they pee their pants and then you've got to go drive to school or something. So it's always good to do that before you leave the house. But all of these different things are going to pile on top of you. And so setting that intention that you have to leave 20 minutes earlier, or you have to start to leave 20 minutes earlier than you intend to leave, is like first and primary. And so Nancy, you're already doing that. You're already starting from the best possible thing, which is no matter how early I start, we're either late or someone snaps. So you've already started by saying, well, at least you're not putting that additional rushing on kids. And I will say, this is a good moment to just say, when you have that 20-minute buffer to get out of the house, you are far less likely to be like, oh my God, we're late. Come on, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And that stuff really, really gets to kids in a negative way. And it makes them melt down, and then it's slower getting out of the house, and it just, everything is worse. So you might think, oh, okay, well, we only have 5 minutes to get out of the house, I can just start barking orders and pushing people out of the house. But that is not usually going to work. It's usually going to backfire. So now that we have our leave time, whatever that is for you, Nancy, for me, it's 8:35. Now we've moved back 20 minutes. So we've said, okay, that's when we're going to start putting our backpack on, putting our shoes on, putting our coat on. And by the way, if you wind up getting way out of the house 10 minutes early or even 15 minutes early, playing in the front yard for an additional 15 minutes before the bus comes or before you have to get in the car is actually a very regulating positive activity on the whole. So even if you wind up going, okay, John, but I don't need 20 minutes to get out of the house. I only need 5. And now my kid's outside and they're cold and they have 15 minutes to stand out there. Then give them more clothes. Like dress them up warmer, because that extra 15 minutes of just calm play before they actually enter into that space of shifting into a new environment is a net positive for them. So let's start with that intention. We're going to start getting ready 20 minutes ahead of when we actually have to leave. And even if that means that we're early, that's okay. Next, I would work backwards from that leave point so that mine's 8:15. I don't know what yours is. I'd work backwards from that, and I would set the next, let's say 30 to 45 minutes. I would create a routine that is brutally predictable every single day, the same thing. And like I said, it could only be 30 minutes. It only has to be 30 minutes. But that routine is going to include things like breakfast, as I already said, going to the bathroom, getting clothes on, although I have actually skipped that one. I put my kids in the clothes that they're going to wear the next day overnight. I don't know if that's weird, but I've just learned that if PJs is one more thing I don't want to have to deal with in the morning, especially because I'm getting my kids all these additional clothes to go out and spend all day in the forest. And so I just do that the night before. So you may have different ones than me. Maybe yours is, like you said, brushing somebody's hair. I have one daughter, and I have to brush her hair, but she's only 1 year old, so it takes about 6 seconds. None of my other kids have long enough hair that I really have to brush. So maybe that's part of your morning routine. But every single aspect of this morning routine is going to be brutally predictable. And I would make a physical visual aid for that. So I would literally sit down with your child. You can have them, especially the 6-year-old, contribute to that visual aid, contribute to that morning routine. They can draw the pictures for it or something. And I would literally, like, if it's a checklist that they can check off on with like a whiteboard marker, or if it's a sticker that they can put on each one of their things or whatever, or if it's a Post-it note that they can cover up, or you can make like if you want to get really fancy, you can go in and make like a fold down chart where they fold down each step of it. I have that downloadable that's available for people inside my membership for bedtime routine. And I think I might even have one for morning routine. But whatever it is, you're going to have those, let's say a minimum of 4 steps that they're going to do every single morning. And those steps are going to be brutally consistent. So now we've taken out of the equation basically any change or any variability. We've just said every single morning, here are going to be the steps. Bop, 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 8:15. Now we're getting our backpacks on. We're getting our shoes on, boots on, whatever. Bundled up, lunch in the lunchbox, whatever, out the door. Right. And if you're early, great. Now we're playing in the front yard or the backyard or on the street corner, wherever that looks like for you. When you set that brutally predictable routine, now a lot of that tension, a lot of that aggression, a lot of that feeling rushed, just like the old wiring that comes in when things don't go well, a lot of that can be mitigated by the fact that you're actually things are going to go well. And I know that that sounds kind of silly or like foolish, but when you make things so brutally predictable, then kids just kind of fall into that pattern and they fall in line. This is the exact same thing. And I should probably look ahead at my other questions here before I answer this, because maybe somebody's going to say they really don't like going to school. But if one of the issues is that your kid doesn't like going to school, one of the top pieces of advice for that as well is make a routine that's brutally predictable, that it just happens the exact same way every day. So there's no variability, so that they're not kind of finding ways to derail the process. They're going to do bop, 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 bop. And here's the beautiful part. If there's a visual aid, if they've helped to plan this, now you can actually, after week 1, maybe after, I would guess with your 6-year-old after week 1, maybe with your 3-year-old, it's after week 2 or week 3. You can start to say, like, what's next? What's next on the routine list? Next it's this, next it's this, next it's this. You can make up a song if you don't want to do a visual aid, or you can make up a song that goes with the visual aid. Whatever you want to do. Every single step of that needs to be brutally consistent. Now, 2 weeks in, you can start to add some variability. You can say, oh, do you want to do this first or that first? I'm not saying that I would do that, but if you need to do that for whatever reason, you can start to do that. But before 2 weeks, I would just make that brutally consistent. And what will happen is you'll realize very quickly a routine that took, at the beginning, we said it's going to be a 30-minute morning routine followed by a 20 minutes of actually getting out the door, into the car, onto the bus, whatever. That 50-minute routine, you probably can shrink down by the end of week 1, by the end of week 2 for sure. You're going to realize, you know what, that 30-minute routine probably only takes 20 minutes now because my kids are actually doing what they need to do, blah, blah, blah. And so let's give it 25 minutes instead. Okay, we've been getting out the door in 2.5 to 5 minutes for 2 weeks straight. We can shrink that 20-minute time down to 10 minutes, right? No big deal. You can adjust the timing of it, but I wouldn't adjust the steps. So in other words, to go take it all the way back to the beginning, when you say, what am I doing wrong? The answer is actually less of what you're doing wrong and just what you're not doing. And what you're not doing is making this entire process so brutally predictable that their brain, which is underdeveloped, which has a hard time predicting the future, which has a hard time to orient steps in a series, right? These are all executive functions, things that you as an adult hopefully have mastered. You have taken away all of this mental and cognitive challenges from morning routine. And now it just becomes a game of just following the steps in the series with the visual aid, with the whatever. And all of a sudden they're out the door. So that's where I think we really need to get to that point. And that is going to be, it's going to carry through all of our questions today. But that's where I want to begin the episode, or I guess we're like halfway through the episode probably at this point. But that's where I want to go first, because understanding how powerful routines are, not just because of discipline, not just because of these other positive things, but how powerful routines are because of the underdeveloped nature of our child's prefrontal cortex, which is the part of their brain which organizes items and systems and can do these executive functioning like tasks to get out the door. The reason that you can get out the door in a minute and a half and it takes them 5 or 10 or 15 or even 20, right? All of those things, we're removing those barriers. And once we remove those barriers, it's going to go a lot more smoothly. And some days it's still going to go bad. If that's the case, that's okay. That's why we can repair. And I have episodes on that, and I'm not going to get into that today. All right, let's go to question 2. All right, question 2 comes from Dave, and he says, I could really use your help with this one, John. Every morning we reach the shoes and coat part and everything falls apart. My 4-year-old becomes floppy and dramatic. My toddler is zigzagging around the house half dressed. I feel my patience evaporate. What's hard is how predictable it is. The same spot, the same meltdown every single day. It's like our routine hits the same emotional pothole, and I don't know how to steer around it. How do I break this pattern without turning into a drill sergeant that I swore that I wouldn't become? I love that, Dave. So to begin the answer to that question, everything I just said to Nancy about the brutality of the routine becoming the thing. And now I'm going to add a layer to it. So number one, we've already gotten to the point where we say a lot of this is falling apart, probably because your kids have identified that part of their routine for the morning is the emotional meltdown. So I want to just kind of like frame that in terms of your kid will find routines and patterns because the world is not predictable to them. Say that one more time. Your kid will find routines and patterns maybe where they aren't even there, or where you wish they weren't, because the world is not as predictable and consistent as they might like it to be. So with that being said, part of your morning routine, Dave, what I've just explained to Nancy, part of your morning routine is a meltdown. That's one of the steps in your morning routine. And what you're hoping to do is replace that meltdown with something else. And so here's how I would do that in 2 ways, building upon the idea that we can create this routine. I would do the exact same steps as Nancy. Build the morning routine that's brutally predictable. Give yourself additional time when it's actually time to get out the door. That's going to help you as well. Now, I'm going to take it one step further. Before the routine starts, I think we add a step, like literally it's right when your child wakes up. And that step is to connect emotionally with your kids. I know a lot of parents, and I understand this impulse, and I'm not shaming anyone because I've done it in our house. We have been in seasons where this has been the morning routine. A lot of parents will have a kid who gets up at 6 a.m. and you said you have a 4-year-old who becomes floppy and dramatic, right? And your toddler is zigzagging around the house. I'm going to just assume here that you might be up in the middle of the night, right? And if you're not, that's fine. But in my case, with a 1-year-old, the last year, I've been up a lot of times in the middle of the night. 2 nights ago, I was still up for most of the night, which is crazy to think about. But she woke up in the middle of the night and she's just like wide awake, not upset, not unhappy. This kid has been a champion sleeper for her, basically her whole life. In comparison to my other kids, at least. Maybe other people might say, well, she's not that great of a sleeper. But man, if you had my first 3 kids, you would probably look at her and go, wow, this is a huge blessing and break for you that she ever sleeps through the night, or that she ever, is able to put herself back to sleep in the middle of the night, which is basically my other kids could not, or 2 of the 3 of my other kids could not ever do that until they were much older than she is now. But a couple nights ago, she wakes up and she's just like wired, like happy, awake, just like crawling around in her sleep sack, just like trying to be like, hey, come on, go, let's get up, let's be. It's 1 a.m., right? This is like literally the direct middle of her sleep cycle. So she goes to bed at 7, she wakes up at 7. So this is the direct middle of when she's supposed to be asleep. And she was up for 2 hours almost, on and off. She basically never snoozed during that time, and then slept in until like 8:30, 8:45. But in the mornings, all of a sudden, John, how does this relate? In the mornings, we created kind of a de facto routine that one of the first things my kids do when they get up is they have to entertain themselves, because either me or my wife is just up with our kids all night. And I know that I'm going to get canceled for this, but hopefully if you made it this far through the podcast, you have a general feeling that I'm doing the best that I can. But part of entertaining themselves is like sometimes they just go down and grab the remote and turn on a show for themselves. Or they sometimes go down and they find the Nintendo Switch and they just start playing it. Or do some other screen thing, dysregulating thing. And then they go over to the snack drawer, and instead of eating, like a well-balanced breakfast of eggs and Beyond sausage or something, they open that thing up and they're just basically eating sugar. Because, it's like a granola bar, a protein bar, but it's like 90% sugar, right? And so it's like, oh, John, don't have that in your house. Oh, John, don't have screens in your house. Oh, John, hide the remotes. Okay, we could do all of that, and that's what we do in the best scenarios. But on some mornings, and there have been times when our 1-year-old, or at other times with my older kids, when they were super little, 6 months old, whatever, where like for a week straight, our kid feels like they're getting up and kind of taking care of themselves. And if it means that we can get another extra hour of sleep, not wake up the baby, and everybody else can be more well rested, that kid's going to be more dysregulated. Like that's the trade-off that we have sometimes. But what I know is that a lot of those meltdowns, the floppy and dramatic, as you're saying, the zigzagging around the house, super wired, I can tell you that a lot of those, at least in my house, come from that time where if my kid has watched screens in the morning, if my kid has not had, enough protein for breakfast, that stuff happens. It happens. And I just have to kind of smile and laugh and say, well, this is the cost of that extra hour of rest or snoozing or whatever on our part. And you know what? To my kids' credit, if they ever need anything, if they ever get hurt or something, they just come wake us up. They don't care about that. But sometimes, especially when the 9-year-old's up and he can kind of navigate things and help his siblings with things, they just take advantage of that opportunity to say, okay, I'm gonna have a couple episodes of Bluey or whatever before mom and dad really get up, or dad comes out from being with a baby or whatever. And what we can replace that with in our routine, Dave, this is a long roundabout way to get. What we can replace that time with in our routine is saying, okay, instead of doing that, the first 20 minutes when they're awake, if you can do this, if at all possible, you connect deeply with your child. Connect with them emotionally, have conversation with them, just cuddle with them. We did that this morning with my kids, just 20 minutes of cuddle time. And that has the exact opposite impact. There's this researcher, Jacques Pengstaff, who's the first behavioral neuroscientist, basically. And he talks about how, 3 minutes after your kid wakes up is like prime neurological brain, like reset for the day. And if you can connect deeply with your child in those 3 minutes, they're going to feel connected with you for basically the whole day. And if you don't do that, you're going to have a hard time connecting with them for the whole day. So the first thing I would do is go, as hard as it is, and I know that there aren't always seasons where this is possible, really deeply connect with your 4-year-old and your toddler first thing in the morning when they first wake up. Again, 3 to 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. An extra cuddle, just, hey, I love you, just being close to them. And a lot of that is going to build up that emotional and the relational capital, and it's going to help you kind of carry through the whole morning routine. The second piece of advice that I would add to all of this, and that was really long way around way of getting to that one. The second piece of advice is I would say we need to somehow turn this into a game. We know that there is excess energy there, especially for the toddler, to get out. We know that the excess energy is there. We know that they have a need that they're trying to meet. That's why I say for the 4-year-old, the floppy and dramatic, the need that they need is to connect with you. That's what they're trying to do. For the toddler, there's another need needs to be met, which is like just they're wired, they're just running everywhere. That need, the way that we meet that need is by turning this into some form of game. So yes, we can do the routine, but maybe one part of the routine is a game that is kind of active, right? One part of the routine is after we get our shoes and our coats on, we run from one end of the house to the other and back again. Or we run around the block as fast as we can. Whatever that piece is, we need to create one mark that is a fun, positive connection experience for our child. Usually that's through play, and it seems like it needs to be active. And if we can add those things to our routine, and Nancy, by the way, feel free, if you're still listening, continue to do that as well. Add a game to your morning routine. I think it's a great thing for any of us to do, but especially for those kids they've created a routine which includes a meltdown, which includes chaos. We have to create a routine that targets and kind of aims that chaos. A great example of this, and I can't spend too much longer on this because I have to move on and finish the episode. But a great example of this last night, I was standing in line at Potbelly, which is a sandwich place here in Chicago. I think there's locations elsewhere as well. And I always order my wife's food at the end. So I go there with all my kids, but without my wife while she's working. And I order her food at the end so that it's not like super soggy. It's a hot sandwich, so it can be like real soggy if we've been there an hour or something. So I order it at the end. And my 3-year-old was done with being there. He's almost 4. He was done with being there. He's like running around. He's like tearing things up. He's like getting into stuff. There's like new hire orientation. They don't know what to do with him. And I realized that while I was ordering the sandwich, I had to assign him a job or a task. And so I told him, there was a mom in front of me in line without her kids. And she was like, man, that was really brilliant. I love that. You should share that with people. I said, hey buddy, I have a job for you. And he comes over to me and I go, hey, can you go stand? Our table is near the bathrooms. By the way, pro hack, right? Sit near the bathrooms. My 3-year-old in the middle of his mac and cheese was like, yeah, I have to be. And then we're right there. So it's great. Anyway, we go. I say, go over, stand by our table, and I want you to count the number of people who go in and out of the bathrooms while I'm ordering the sandwich. I need to know how many people go in and out of the bathrooms. And he's like, okay. And so he runs over there, and he doesn't even do it. He like gets distracted by something else that my 9-year-old's doing, and he like winds up playing with him. But I needed to redirect him from causing chaos, and so I had to create a game to redirect him. Just saying, don't do that, stop that right now, you sit right here, is almost always going to receive that pushback, because the reason that they're doing that craziness or running around half dressed is because they're trying to get a fundamental need met. This is what I talk about in chapter 2 of my book, right? Like there's a need that needs to be met. Unless we meet the need, we are going to continue to see the behavior. Their kids will meet their needs in maladaptive ways if we don't give them adaptive ways to meet them, right? And I could have given my 5-year-old another task. I could have said, okay, you stand by the bathrooms, you count the people coming in and out. I could have said to my 5-year-old, don't let him go in the bathroom after these people, right? We can stack the jobs, right, on top of each other. All right, so we're talking about routines. What are the types of things we can add to our routines so that we don't become the drill sergeant? And by the way, if you don't want to be the drill sergeant, you have to replace that with the reason the drill sergeant is effective is, this is what I was trying to get to and I forgot. The reason the drill sergeant is effective is because they bark orders and they're like really firm and there's a lot of energy there. You can bring that energy without that posture. So you can bring the same amount of energy without the, hey, do this or else. You can, my wife calls it green energy. You can just be, hey, like, let's do this instead. Redirect, positive. Okay. Last question. Here we go. This one is, this person did not send their name in. So I don't know who this is from, but it's a funny question. So I want to keep it. It says, hey, John, okay, I have a serious parenting situation for you. Every single morning in my house turns into a shoe hunt. My 6-year-old shoes vanish completely into another dimension. We'll find one in the pantry, one in the bathtub or something. Do you have any brain hacks that will work for this. I do have a brain hack that will work for this. Everything that I've said so far, turn it into a game. Yes. The Great Shoe Hunt, actually lean into that, right? But I think another great hack here, and this is kind of goes with the setting up the morning routine at the beginning. And this is a classic morning issue that people have. Included in the morning routine is setting yourself up for success the night before. And a lot of parents do this by, after the kids go to bed, they pack the lunches, they get all the backpacks together, they line up everything for everybody. And I'm not opposed to that. If that's how you want to do this, you go ahead and do that right now. Go find the shoe in the bathtub at night before you go to bed. Don't go to bed without knowing where the shoes are. That's totally something that you can do. But if you want to empower a 6-year-old who, by the way, might be 7 soon, right? Might be 8 soon. These kids at some point are going to grow up and need to learn discipline and responsibility, and not in a negative way, in a positive way, right? They have to learn responsibility because responsibility grants a child agency and autonomy. And children who are given tasks like this, like, hey, keep track of your shoes, wind up being kids who feel confident and resilient, right? So if we do everything for our kids, they're not going to feel confident and resilient. We're encouraging them to find ways and adaptive ways to do this stuff. It's going to make them confident and resilient. So this is positive for your child, right? When I say responsibility and discipline, these are things that make people feel good about themselves, okay? So what I would do with the 6-year-old is I would turn this into a game as well. But the way that I would turn this into the game is actually the night before. I would say, like, the shoes need a place where they sleep. And I love this phraseology. The shoes have a place where they sleep, because kids fundamentally understand that they have a place where they sleep. And they understand that every night at the same time they go to bed in this place. And now we can make a story about how our kids, the shoes, need to go to sleep. And this would be a great children's book, by the way. Maybe I'll write this someday as a children's book. But the shoes need to find a place where they sleep. And we can do that in a couple different ways. We can have a shoe rack where all the shoes sleep together. We could have literally something as simple as some masking tape on the ground in the mudroom area where our kid has to put their shoes in this box, and this is their bed where they sleep. You could literally have a cardboard box. You could have a little chest where the shoes sleep, and they have to go in there and they have to close it up so that it's dark and they can go to bed. But what you want to establish is this routine for your child where they're doing this the night before and they can feel a sense of agency. And that part of bedtime routine now becomes, did you put your shoes to bed? And by the way, that can also trigger to them that it's time for them to go to bed. So this becomes kind of like a double framing around routines of saying, hey, this is the game. The game is put the shoes to bed. Your kid goes and finds them. Probably your kid's going to have a much clearer picture of where their shoes are that night, where they probably took them off, within the last 3 to 5 hours, than the next morning after they've just slept on it. Not always, but some kids always know where their shoes are. Some kids never know where their shoes are. I can tell you from experience, my 9-year-old, he will know where something is that he buried in the backyard a year ago. Like, he has an incredible memory. It puts me to shame. He frequently knows where my stuff is, and I don't. He was actually out in the backyard looking for something that somebody pulled out of my wallet, just not even a week ago. Or, so that happened, and then he was trying to find it today. He knew where it was. When it comes to his shoes, this kid has no recollection. And it's because it's an unconscious habit for him to take off his shoes. It's an unconscious habit for him to just kind of do this, and he doesn't think about it. So it's not like he feels himself putting it down. It just happens, right? And then he doesn't think about it because it's become so rote and so, part of his day that he doesn't ever have to even consider. Well, now if you make that routine of, here's the shoes have to go to bed, which, by the way, we've done in our house in some form or fashion. And we've oscillated back and forth between, like, I'm just going to lay out everything for them the night before because I don't want to have to deal with this, and between, like, really trying to instill that sense of value and responsibility. But when they have that, they can really do this. And it's incredible the positive association that kids have when they have something like that. So I cannot save you the Great Shoe Hunt every single morning, but I do think that one of the best things we can do is to create those other routines. And this doubles as a bedtime routine too, where you're putting the shoes to bed and now we're going to go to bed ourselves. But that's the way that I would do this. That's how I would handle this. And it is a brain hack because it's play-based, and anything that is play-based is inherently a brain hack because it works with a different part of their brain. If they see it as a chore and a task that they're being forced to do, they're going to be resistant to it, no matter what the kid is, especially younger kids, but all kids will be more or less resistant to that. But if they see it as like this task that they are doing together in a shared way. And you can go put your shoes to bed at the same time or something, right? You don't have to do this all on their own. But that's how I would solve that. And probably that adds back into the other two questions as well. I don't know if, in Dave's case, right, if a lot of the reason that his 4-year-old becomes floppy and dramatic is because he can't find shoes. I don't know if part of the 6-year-old and 3-year-old with Nancy, the reason that it's tense in the morning is because they can't find their shoes. So please feel free to use all of these guys. And I hope that it helps you. All right. That is what I have for this episode on morning routines. As always, if you want to support me, the podcast, if you want to support me on social media, the way to do that is not only to like and subscribe and share all of the content that you see there, but also to head over to Substack. On Substack, for $5 a month, you can just be one of the people who donates to make sure that Whole Parent can keep going. Always join my email list. I'll have a link to that in the show notes, where I send out emails every single week with great advice, parenting advice. Some of that's more philosophical stuff that I talk about on episodes. You can obviously on Substack, I post all my emails on Substack for paid subscribers. So you can always see my previous emails there as well. And yeah, that's what I have for you today. I hope that all of your morning routines go smoothly. I know that they won't always, but I hope that this stuff helps you parent a little bit better today. This has been the Whole Parent Podcast.